Hi everyone, my name is Oscar Velasquez, and this is my reflective journal video going over four major key points that I learned throughout the class and ones that I mentioned in my reflective journals. So first key point that I want to talk about is the impossible trinity, which was featured in chapter 2 of our textbook. So what the impossible trinity is it's used whenever a country is trying to set their exchange rates. So the 3 points of the impossible trinity are: one, the exchange rate stability; two, the monetary independence; and three, the full financial integration. So first is the exchange rate stability, or a managed or pegged exchange rate. So this is basically when a country is trying to figure out a way that whenever they are exchanging goods or currency with another country, that the exchange rate is not going to fluctuate too much. So the professor provided a great example of this, where a country is buying raw materials from another country, and that country is selling a product back to the original country at a later date. But in between that time, in between the time of purchasing the raw materials and production of the final product, the dollar has depreciated a lot. So then essentially you are selling at a loss when you go back to sell your product. So this puts off a lot of countries for wanting to do business with a country whose exchange rate fluctuates a lot. So this is why this is part of the Trinity, because you want to ensure that your exchange rate is stable enough for other countries to be attracted to sell in your country. The next point of the Trinity is the monetary independence, which is an independent monetary policy set by the government. So this point is: in any fixed rate regime, you can only stick to whatever currency your government decided on. This means you cannot print out as much money as you want due to resources or lack of. So for example, like if your country currency is gold or something like that. So this point is important because, as you saw during the pandemic, the US was able to print out money for the stimulus packages for US residents and also for the economy, since the stock market took a huge hit during that time. The US was able to inject money back into the stock market, so that way they were able to stabilize it again. So this point is really great, like for in case of emergencies. So the next key point, is the full financial integration. And this is if the country's currency is easily flowable from one country to another. One thing is that some countries actually make it harder, so it's like a way to stabilize their currencies. So then that's it for the Trinity, for the impossible Trinity. So the next topic that I want to go over is the foreign exchange market. So the foreign exchange market is a lot more important and a lot more complicated than I once originally thought. So I originally thought that the US stock market was the only way that people were able to profit off of a market in that way. I never knew that there was a way you can do that with the foreign exchange market. Essentially, there are two types of people who are using the foreign exchange market. The first is businesses who are importing and exporting goods and using the exchange market solely just for business purposes and commercial purposes. Second, they are called speculators, and these are people that want to make a profit by examining the different exchange rates. So after examining the different exchange rates, similar to how people invest in the US stock market, they're able to determine when they're able to make a profit and when it wouldn't be a good idea and when they would lose money. So there are dealers who act as the middleman, and these dealers, they use the bid-ask system. And just to clarify what that is, the bid is the price at which dealers buy, and then the ask is the price at which the dealers sell to whoever is interested, whether it be the businesses or the speculators. Central banks can also use these dealers to ease pressure on currencies. So for example, in case a country's currency is experiencing like deflation or anything like that, the banks, they can create fake demand by purchasing more of a currency to try and help it settle out and go back to its normal rate. So how do these transactions happen in the foreign exchange market? So first we have to look at the different rates that there are. So one, there are spot rates, and number two, there are forward rates. So spot rates are rates that are set for that same day, and then forward rates are rates that are estimated to be at a later date. So for example, maybe like 30 days from now. A simple transaction method that uses both of these rates is called a swap transaction. So in a swap transaction, essentially you are buying a currency at a certain rate today and then selling it at a forward rate. But both of these transactions happen on the same day. So it's like a contract type of thing. But the actual selling of the currency won't happen until the day that you choose. So for example, like the 30 days in the future. So that's it for the foreign exchange market part that I wanted to talk about. So now let me get into foreign currency derivatives, which are futures and options. So basically what derivatives are is they are any asset that drives value from an underlying asset. So for example, like stocks. Most companies don't use futures or options. Instead, they use forward rates. So these are used mostly by the speculators, like I mentioned earlier, the people that try to make a profit off of the foreign exchange market. So these speculators actually look for inefficiencies in the market and they help drive them away. So futures are similar to forwards. They have a contract involved that have two additional requirements. So they have an initial and an ongoing margin balance. So an initial is some percentage of whatever the contract total is. And this is also a mark to market. So they will ask you to put more money down if the value of the contract goes up. So with forwards, there is no down payment involved. So this is why companies prefer forwards because they don't use a mark to market and there's no down payment or anything like that. And then next we have the options, which are put and call options. So a put option is when you buy when you think the exchange rate is going to go down. And then a call option is when you buy when you think the rate is going to go up. So for options is a right to purchase and it's not an obligation to sell. So it does involve a premium because they essentially pick whenever you're about to purchase. And then a strike price is whatever price you buy or sell at. So next, I would like to get into foreign direct transaction, translational, and operational exposure. But I'm mainly going to focus on transaction exposure, but I'll go over all three of them briefly. So what transaction exposure is it's when you're already entered into a transaction, but the exchange of the currency does not happen until the future, so a forward rate. So this creates uncertainty about how much you will pay at the time of payment. It could either be more or it could be less. A translational exposure is when a company has different branches in different countries, but whenever they work on their finances, they use their home currency. So for example, if one of the branches decides to report their income or their profit back to the home currency or back to the home country, the home country has to translate their currency into the home currency. So there's always that's why it's called translational exposure, because there's a translation from one currency to the next. The next one is operational exposure, and this is when there is a change in exchange rate that is super dramatic. This is a long-term effect on a company. So for example, a country can update their currency and it would appreciate a lot, making it less attractive for that country to sell in other countries. But it would actually be more attractive for other countries to sell in that country, since that country's currency has appreciated greatly. So for example, whenever a currency appreciates after the initial contract is signed, instead of a certain amount, you might have to pay double that. And this is going over the transaction exposure because you are setting a forward rate. So a couple ways to manage transaction exposure is actually don't manage it. So just accept the fact that it's going to be different. The exchange rate is going to be different 30 days from now, for example. Another one is forward contract. So this method is future-proofing yourself and saving you from any surprises that might come. And you just plan ahead and forecast what the exchange rate will be. And then the next one is money market hedge. So you can either borrow or loan money in the currency you are exchanging, and then leave it in a bank and let the money move with the inflation of the market and pull it out once the time to pay comes. And then the next one is options. So you have to take a position. So you can either call if you think the rate will go up, or put if you think it will go down. So the downside to this is that if you predict incorrectly or correctly, you still have to pay the option premium. So you could either lose money or just pay more money or pay more money. Yeah. So those are the 4 key points that I wanted to touch on in this video presentation. We learned a lot in this class. So it was hard to kind of narrow it down, but these are the ones that I wanted to touch on. I would like to thank the professor for providing us with all these video lectures and for all the help that he's given us throughout the semester. I also just want to congratulate everyone for their videos and for completing this tough semester almost. So yeah, all right. Thank you, everyone.